Hello, once again, everybody. My name is Tom Bufoya. I want to say thank you for joining me today. This is my second video on YouTube. Once again, I told you all, if you saw the first video, my main purpose of starting this YouTube channel is to speak to, young people my age, or actually people of all ages who are looking to dive into things concerning their passion, their purpose in life. And I'm coming from a spiritual perspective. Speaking of which, whenever I say God, that's because I'm coming from a spiritual perspective. Some people might say the universe is however you want to look at it. I'm just giving you my own personal experience and who I believe in. All right. So day number 2, we're going to talk about finding purpose in your pain. So finding purpose in your pain. And what we're using today is the story of Joseph in the Bible. Little side note, my middle name is Joseph. So this is something that's pretty close to me. But the story of Joseph in the Bible, if you don't know it, he was pretty much sold by his brothers into slavery. And once he was sold into slavery based on jealousy, he got to Egypt, and then a gentleman named Potiphar went ahead and bought him. But while he was in Potiphar's house, he did a good job, so he rose up the ranks in that house. And then Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him because he was handsome. But he didn't want to do that because he was a faithful servant and he was a child of God. And because he didn't want to do that, she lied to her husband and said, Joseph tried to rape me and things like that. So even though he had risen out of slave, he was still a slave, but he had risen up in ranks, he still got thrown into prison. And while in prison, 2 of the king's servants got sentenced to prison for a long time. And while they were there, they each had a dream, and Joseph interpreted the dream for them. And then it turns out, long story short, the dream came true. And when the second guy was leaving, the guy was, if you haven't read the story, just go and read the story. I believe it's Genesis chapter, I want to say, starting from chapter 40 or so. The bulk of it, most of the success part is in chapter 50. But anyway, whenever the guy left, he completely forgot about what Joseph had told him. Joseph said, when you go back, they're going to restore you to your position with Pharaoh the king. So when Pharaoh had a dream, the guy forgot about Joseph. But later on, he remembered, okay, there was this guy in prison who translated for me, and whatever he told me about that dream that would happen, that ended up coming true. So the reason why I'm using the story of Joseph is, look at all the different situations that he went through. He got sold into slavery by his own family, and then he got accused by the wife of Potiphar, which sent him into prison. And then while in prison, he helped this guy. The guy comes out and he forgets. Now I'm using that to relate that to us because sometimes we go through different circumstances, we go through different trials and things like that. But God is using all of those little circumstances and trials to get us to that journey. Because had Joseph not been sold into slavery, he would have never went to Egypt. And had he not been lied on by Potiphar's wife, he would have never went to prison. And then in prison is where he met that servant of the king, who when he went and told the king, okay, this guy can translate your dream, which in the long term told Joseph all the way up in the ranks. He was only second to Pharaoh. Now, had all those bad things not happened, he wouldn't be where he is. So you have to find purpose in your pain. Maybe you got divorced, but you have to see what it is about that divorce that God is maybe going to use. Now, I'm not saying God caused that divorce, so don't get me wrong, but how can you use that to get you closer to your purpose? Sometimes we try to go for a job that we really want, and then they tell us no. But if you think about the past, I'm pretty sure there's a time in your life where somebody had told you no, and then a couple of days or a week or even a month later, something else came along that was a lot better. So because Joseph went into prison, God was able to use that situation to rise him up the ranks to second in Egypt. And then based on his position, he was able to save not only the Egyptians from famine, but he was also able to bring in his brothers and sisters into Egypt and save them from famine as well. So a couple things that I want to kind of go over here is your pain can lead you to your purpose. So the pain of his brothers selling him into slavery, the pain of the lady accusing him and going to prison for a long time. Those are all the things that led him to his purpose. And then number 2 is God will use your pain to save others. So God used the pain that Joseph went through to save Egypt from the famine. Because had he not been in prison, he would have never met that guy who said, hey, this guy knows how to translate dreams, which is that skill that Joseph used to translate the dream that Pharaoh had. And then that way he was put in charge of the food that saved Egypt, to where in a time of plenty, they were able to save. And then when the famine came 7 years later, they were able to use the food that they had saved up to survive that. And also, he saved his own brothers who had sold him to slavery. He saved them because where they're at, their dad had to send them to Egypt to say, hey, can you go ask the Egyptians if they will sell us some food? And guess who they met there? Joseph. But in that moment, he was able to save his own family. So God uses our pain to save others. And number 3, our hurt and our pains are unique to us. Joseph's story is very unique. I mean, who gets sold into slavery, accused of rape, and going to prison? So I'm pretty sure you have your own pain that you've went through. I have my own pain that I went through. Being honest, I've struggled with alcohol for a very long time, but that's a pain that I can use to relate to somebody else who's going through an addiction. There's people out there who are lost a parent, or even worse, I feel like somebody who has lost their child, because I feel like no one should have to bury their kid. But those people, based on their pain, they can talk to somebody else who's going through the exact same thing. That is something I could never do. So I could never walk up to that person and say, I know how you feel, because honestly, I do not know what it feels like to lose a loved one who's really close. My entire what's the word I'm looking for? My entire nuclear family is still here with me, or I guess my immediate family, is still here. But everything, each of our pains and circumstances are unique. I survived a civil war back in my home country of Liberia. You've survived some other things. Some people live in Chicago, they've survived gun battles. I don't know that struggle. So use your pain and your uniqueness and those circumstances to reach out to people that you can also be able to save. Because don't forget, number 2, God uses our pain to save others. And then number 4 is whenever God has used your pain to get you to that position. Now, if somebody like betrayed you in the past, you went through a really nasty divorce, or a boss was supposed to give you a job and are taking the job away from you at the last minute. Now, all those situations that you've gone through, those pains are what brought you here. So, in a quick little moment here, in the past, I would say, man, I can't wait. Whenever God takes me to that one position, I'm going to show this person. I'm going to show him, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to I'm going to buy that building from that boss once I become a millionaire, and I'm going to have him fired. And then whoever my ex was, she did me this way. When I'm at that place, I'm going to show him. And guess what? It's not like that, because take the story of Joseph. When God used his pain to get him to that high position to be second only to Pharaoh, guess what? His brothers came back and started asking, like, hey, can you give us food? Now, had he not forgiven those people, he would have used that situation to say, okay, now I'm going to show him, I'm going to lock him in prison, I'm going to keep him there, they're not going to get any food. But no, God put you in those positions because of that pain. And now, had it not been for that person causing you that pain, you wouldn't be where you're at today. So let go of any hatred in your heart about what happened, because guess what? At the end of the day, I feel like it is all part of God's plan to get you to where you're at today. And the scripture for today is coming from Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. And it reads, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what has now been done, the saving of many lives. This is Joseph talking to his brothers. But this is something I feel like would be us talking to the enemy, the devil. It's like, you intended this to be bad. You intended this to harm me. You sold me into slavery, or you ruined my marriage, or you affected that job I was supposed to get, or my family deserted me. My mom kicked me out when I was 15. But all of those different situations that the devil intended for bad, because it's not necessarily he's using those people in your lives or the circumstances. It's not necessarily the people themselves intended for bad. God has turned that situation into good. God has turned my alcoholism into good, to where I can speak to people who are going through the same thing, because guess what? I went through that, And at the very last part is like, now the saving of many lives. Like I said, he's going to use your pain to help save people. It is not for you to get your own riches and things like that, but this is to save people. So this is why I started this YouTube channel, because I feel like if I'm coming here with daily devotion, I don't know who's out there, I don't know who's listening, but my goal is just to save people. Now in verse 21 it says, so then don't be afraid, I will provide for you and your children. This is Joseph speaking to his brothers. And it says he reassured and spoke kindly to him. That's the part that's important. He told him, don't be afraid, right? Why is he saying that? Because sometimes when we're in that position, now we want to go back and, exact revenge on those people who put that pain on us. Your mom who kicked you out at the age of 15, you want to go back and show her, like, look what I became, and all this stuff. Forget all that nonsense. Just let that stuff go, because God used those situations to get you to where you're at today. So once again, I hope this has been helpful for you all. And don't forget, God uses your pain to get you to your purpose. So whatever situation you're going through right now, it is not the end of the road. The question you should have is, you should ask God, hey God, how are you using this pain to get me to my purpose? And if you don't know, then ask him. That's why he is your father. Ask him, let him reveal it to you. And sometimes he might not reveal that to you now, because then you might make some stupid decisions. But eventually, you will always look back and see how every single situation that was meant for bad has actually been turned around for God to get you towards your purpose. All right? So I love you guys. Please stay safe out there. Once again, this is your boy Tom Befoya, and I'll see you all tomorrow. All right? Bye-bye.